Hello and welcome to another episode of Search Off the Record, a podcast coming to you from the Google Search team, discussing all things search and having some fun along the way. My name is John. No, my name's not John. My name is Martin, and I'm joined today by Lizzie and Gary from the Search Relations team, of which I'm also part of. Hello.
Well, hello.
Hi.
Oh my God. Okay, all right. I would like to talk to you about something that does end up being a question that I've been asked everywhere pretty much I go. And I'm always wondering, we do have docs on this, but I do see that people are very confused about it, and that's crawl budget.
What's that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Apparently, obviously, everyone wants everything to be indexed as quickly as possible, be it a new website that just come online, or be it like websites that have plenty of pages and they want to like frequently change those, and they're worried about things not being crawled as quickly. And I usually describe it as a challenge with the balance between not overwhelming the website and also spending our resources where it matters.
Right.
So we have docs on it, but everyone seems very nervous about this. Why is that? Why is everyone so concerned about crawl budget?
I think it's partly a fear of something happening that they can't control, that people can't control. And the other thing is just misinformation. Mm-hmm. Because there were, I don't know if there still are, because, I haven't been on Twitter for 4 hours now. And there were some blogs back in the days where people were talking about crawl budget and it's so important. And then people were finding that, and then they were getting confused about like, okay, so do I have to worry about crawl budget or not? And of course, the default state is usually, yes, I want to worry about it because I'm human and I want to stress myself about everything and my grandmother.
Wait, are you me?
I'm not. I'm just a sentient blob.
A blob. Oh, okay.
A blog?
Blob.
Or a blob. That's less interesting. But let's say you were an interesting blog. Do you need to worry about crawl budget?
I think most people don't have to worry about it. And when I say most, it's probably over 90% of sites on the internet don't have to worry about it. But it doesn't mean that people will not worry about it, right? Because, again, people.
Do you think it has to do with the fact that it's a number and people get stressed about having the right number?
Well, I don't think I've ever seen it quantified, though.
It's in Search Console. It shows you the number, and it's like, is this number good or bad? Like, it's the crawl rate.
I haven't played with Search Console and whatever is in there for 12 years now, so I wouldn't know what is there. But externally, at least, it's not quantified. It's just you have to worry about crawl budget because.
Right, and maybe that's part of the confusion is. Like, what is a good crawl budget? Like, worrying about it. Like, how much is it? Is it good or bad? Like, how do you know if the budget is enough for your site? Or is it sort of a hand wave?
Yes, but then we also try to define it for people a bit. And we put up a blog post in 2013, 14, something about what crawl budget means for Googlebot or something like that. I don't remember what was the title.
I'm going to link it in the show notes.
It's 2017.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay.
And that is the title.
Okay.
I fact checked you live.
That's great. Now I am nervous.
But we are off the record. No worries.
Oh, it is off the record. Okay.
But continue talking into your microphone because it's off the record.
This is all very confusing.
So is crawl budget, apparently.
We put up a blog post which tried to demystify a little bit. Maybe it was also partly demystifying it for us because for the longest time we were saying that we don't have the concept of crawl budget. And it was true. Like, we didn't have something that could mean crawl budget on its own. The same way we don't have a number for EAT, for example. And then because people were talking about it, we tried to come up with something, like at least somehow define it. And then we worked with 2, 3, 4 teams, I don't remember, where we tried to come up with at least a few internal metrics that could map together into something that people externally define as crawl budget. And that's how we came up with that blog post. And then we defined it as number of URLs Googlebot can and is willing or is instructed to crawl.
For a given site.
For a given site, yes. And for us, that's roughly what crawl budget means. Because if you think about it, we don't want to harm websites because Googlebot has enough crawl capacity to bring down sites. And like my spammyguy.com keeps being harassed by Googlebot every now and then. And then we don't want that because people don't like it for some reason. And then Googlebot is instructed to crawl from a site. That's the part where indexing is telling Googlebot that we need a new version of this URL, or we saw this URL and we want to see what's underneath.
Okay. All right. But crawl budget itself does not say anything about the quality or something, right? So if I have a website and I have very few pages, my crawl budget is likely not going to be huge unless the pages change very frequently.
Right.
Right. So I think that's another misconception, that people think like, oh, but we uploaded this new blog post and it has been 2 days and we still haven't seen it crawled. It's like, well, yeah, it just takes a while until we get around to it. But
right.
That's because the internet is large.
And pretty much infinitely large. And we don't have enough storage, because that's another thing that some people don't realize, that when you index stuff, you have to store it somewhere.
Yep.
And that somewhere is either hard disks or memory modules, or it's SSDs. It costs money. It doesn't make sense to invest infinite money in those storage mechanisms, because most of the stuff that you can find on the internet will not be ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the stuff that search engines generally index, not just Google, but most search engines, is stuff that people will likely look for.
Yeah. All right. Got it. Okay, that makes perfect sense to me. And I think another thing that contributes to the wariness that people offer or have towards crawl budget is that there are things that are not as easy to understand about it. For instance, if I build a website that requests a bunch of resources in the background, that counts into my crawl budget, no?
Right.
Right. And I think then we have a lot of caching usually if it's GET requests.
Yep.
But then post requests, you can't cache.
Correct.
So that would consume more. If I have like 10 pages and all of them make a post request to some API, for instance, that would count into my crawl budget each time.
Right.
Because it can't be cached. So these are like technical considerations where people are like, oh, we built this thing with this API and it makes post requests and now we have a crawl budget issue. And I don't
think... How do they know that it's a crawl budget issue? Like at what point is it that they have so many resources or like so many URLs that it's become a problem, or how have they pinpointed the crawl budget?
That's the interesting
issue at all.
That's a really, really interesting question, because pretty much all the time I've been asked this and people were very, very worried, like, oh, we have this issue. We are relaunching our website with this architecture and it's going to have crawl budget issues. And I look at it and I'm like,
going to have.
Yeah, going to have, doesn't even have. They assume it's a crawl budget problem when they are very far from it, especially if it's small websites with like 20 pages. I'm like, no, very unlikely to be an issue. But people are worried about it. And I'm not exactly sure where it comes from. I think it comes from the fact that a few large-scale websites do have articles and blog posts where they talk about like crawl budget being a thing. It is being discussed in SEO training courses, as far as I've seen. It's being discussed at conferences. But it's a problem that is rare to be had. Like, it's not a thing that every website suffers. And yet people are very nervous about it.
Yeah, I think it's also conflated with other things like indexing not willing to schedule crawls.
Discovered but not indexed.
Oh, that's a Search Console thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like we said, we don't have infinite space. So we kind of want to index stuff that we think that, well, not we, but our algorithms determine that might be searched for at some point. And if we don't have signals, for example, yet, about a certain site or a certain URL or whatever, then how would we know that we need to crawl that for indexing? And some things you can infer from, like, for example, if you launch a new blog on your main site, for example, and you have a new /blog subdirectory, for example, then we can sort of infer based on the whole site whether we want to crawl a lot from that /blog or not.
But The blog is a new type of content that might be updated more frequently. So how
Sure.
can we tell if that is like it's just new and we're not sure if it's going to be newsy, like how frequent? It's still
That's
to
right.
be determined.
But we need a starter signal.
And the starter signal is
Infer from the main site.
oh, okay, all right. So if the main site is I don't know, like it's
yearly.
yeah, or like
But you both are thinking small.
oh.
Because you are saying only yearly or whatever, like update frequency, but it's not just update frequency. It's also the quality
the
signals
quality. Okay.
that affect that the main site has. So for example, if we see that a certain pattern is very popular on the internet, like slash product is very popular on the internet and the people on Reddit are talking about it, other sites are linking to URLs on that path, in that pattern, then it's a signal for us that people like that site in general. While if you have something that people are not linking to and then you are trying to launch a new directory, it's like, well, people don't like the site, then why would we crawl this new directory that you just launched? And eventually, if people start linking to
I mean, not crawl it at all versus crawl budget.
but it still goes down to crawl budget.
Yeah, if we decide that we don't want to spend crawling on that pattern, then that's a decision towards spending the crawl budget elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just lowering the crawl budget.
Yeah, not spending your budget is also a budget decision, sort of.
That's interesting because crawl budget, like whose budget is it? Is it Google's budget for your site or your budget that you get to choose to spend?
That's interesting because, yeah.
I want to say Googlebot's budget. Like Googlebot can spend this much on this site.
Oh.
And I can't contribute any, like, please go over here.
But you are influencing that with server capacity, for example.
True.
Because if we can, or Googlebot can get content faster, and it doesn't matter if it crawls with 1 QPS or 1 trillion QPS, queries per second. QPS is queries per second.
Can you say it even more softly?
Queries per second.
I'm hungry for some queries.
Nighttime radio.
Right, so it's Googlebot spending time on your site.
Oh, time. So it's not necessarily
Well, it's
number of
access.
URLs.
Well, it's access.
Also how long it takes to access each URL. So would you get more URLs if
Wait. So the time it takes to access a URL, that just influences your crawl budget. It doesn't decrease it. Well, it might decrease it. But by Googlebot accessing every URL, you are spending from your crawl budget. So you have, I don't know, like 1,000 tokens per day. Googlebot is going to crawl up to 1,000 URLs. That's not how it works, but
like for this example.
yeah, for this example. And then you can decrease crawl budget, like your budget allocation, right? By signaling Googlebot that your server cannot handle the load that Googlebot puts on it.
Okay.
And those signals are stuff like slowing down serving URLs to Googlebot or 503, 429 status codes, HTTP status codes. Those are all signals that signal Googlebot that it needs to slow down. And then the budget will also go down.
Okay.
The budget
And after
allocation.
you do that, say you then pick a different server, you fix your problem, and you want to tell Google it's fine again. How do we say, like, permanently, like, no, we're not coming back here, like you told us no, so we're not coming back? Or how would you get us to come back?
It's not permanent. It's going to increase as the server becomes more healthy.
Okay,
For
so
example.
we'll like check again, but it will be a longer time. Like it'll take us a while.
Well, technically, you can also stop us from crawling the site. Like you can serve 503 for robots.txt, and then we are not going to crawl anything on the site until we get robots.txt or certain conditions are met.
Don't we say like not to do that for certain, like for long term, because then we might not come back ever? Or something
Well,
to that
it's not
effect?
ever.
Oh, okay.
We don't say ever.
No, yeah, we didn't say that, but
It is not forever. It's a longer period of time, but it can be days to weeks or whatever. If something is linked on the internet, then it's extremely likely that we are going to crawl that where the links are pointing, like that URL where the links are pointing, because that's a good signal that the target page is important enough for many people to link to it. So if you are a spammer, for example, and you want something indexed, then that's how you would go about it.
I do see now why people are a little worried about crawl budget because I can see, for instance, if you were to launch an e-commerce store and you have lots of products and you haven't had an e-commerce store beforehand, but you had an offline store beforehand, you might have like 1 million different products, maybe, right? And then you have 1 million URLs, and obviously I want to sell today and not in 2 weeks, not in 4 weeks. On the other hand, I might have technical difficulties because I just set up that new e-commerce store. So maybe Googlebot is like, ooh, there's 1 million new URLs that are being linked from somewhere. So I want to visit all of these URLs. But then after 100 URLs, the server slows down due to technical problems. And then Google assumes, oh, we are overwhelming the server, so we are backing off. And then that slows down crawling and thus indexing and thus things showing up in search results, and that might make you nervous. And there's no button for me to press, no toggle, no switch, no slider to adjust. So I don't have control over it. Google will figure it out, but I as a site owner don't have control over that.
Well, and it's also like a fluid thing. Like it could expand or become smaller. Like if we find that now you have this whole new section of stuff that we need to allocate more budget, that could be okay. And for you to sort of, it's like a strategy game, chicken and egg thing. Like, well, if I have enough crawl budget, then I can launch this site, or do I launch the site and then I get the crawl budget? Like which thing happens? And is it something that you can plan for, or is it more of a look at this to see if there's an issue?
Back to your point about you don't have control over it. You don't have direct control over it. You do have indirect control over it.
Aha. Okay. How does my...
Because, like, for example, if you go to Webmaster to
Search console,
and you see that the response... I'm trying to think of that report where we have the graphs about like how many bytes we downloaded.
Crawl
stats. Thank you.
Settings page.
There you can see it takes more time to download stuff. And then that might be an indication that you need more either processing power, more bandwidth, more something, or that you want Googlebot to slow down.
Oh, so it could be something that you want or don't want? Like, this could be intentional on your part?
You could correlate that with visitors traffic, for example. And then you could say that, okay, when Googlebot was visiting the site, I also had 1,000 visitors on my site, and I want visitors to have priority. So don't do that. Like the max QPS that you queries per second that Googlebot can do on my site is 7.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
And then that 7 is ballpark spread out throughout the day. And then you are not going to get into the situation where both the visitors and Googlebot want to visit your site at the same time.
How do you pick what number is like enough?
I just pick 7.
I know, but like what's like a normal number?
7 is a normal number.
The site content, like if it's a news or live updates, like where they're posting like live updates from some global event or something hourly, like something very frequent.
I mean, I would prefer if people thought about it before they pick a number.
Yes.
And they try to estimate how much is too much. And for that, you need some idea about how servers work and how HTTP connections work, how TCP connections work. Because, for example, if you have HTTP2 enabled on the server and Googlebot is scrolling through H2 from your site, then you are going to have a much better time, because then we can just open a connection and then stream through that instead of overwhelming your server with 8, 9, 10 connections at the same time, because all those connections that we have to make will take up resources. That's why H2 is more efficient in general from resource usage perspective. How you estimate that? Basically correlating what Googlebot was doing on your site with what you see in Search Console. You have the access logs for your site.
So if you see like a number there,
analyze those logs, see when Googlebot was accessing, through how many connections, how fast, like how many requests per second, RPS. Once you have that, then you can correlate it with what you see in Webmaster to Search Console.
Okay. But also some critical thinking about the type of content you have and if that makes sense for your site. Because for your whole site, it's not like, oh, I can just do this for my blog, like the newsy part.
Yeah, you can only do this for the hostname of your site. So yeah, I don't think it's simple, but I also think that it's not for everyone. It's not like everyone has to worry about it all the time. And the other thing is that, because you mentioned discovered, not indexed or something, like if you see those, then it's something about your content or that people don't know about your content.
So you recently updated the documentation about large site owner guide.
I didn't. It was Martin.
No, it was you, definitely.
No, I blame Martin.
You added a line that people who should care about crawl budget, it should be also like not just people with large sites or frequently updated, but the third bullet is people who are seeing a large portion of their site being discovered but not crawled.
Right.
Ooh.
Which we haven't talked about. We just talked about discovered, not indexed.
Yeah, that would be the discovered, not crawled. And that's the bucket where we just don't want to crawl. And that could be down to at least a couple of things. And one of them is technical. And I think we did the update for the technical
So like
part.
a large portion, like 80%. I look at the report and it's like 80% discovered of my URLs. And like, no, I'm moving on to the crawling stage.
Yeah.
And that's because something's wrong.
Right. And one of the some things is quality, which is not necessarily that you have spammy content, but it could be just that people are not looking for that kind of content. Like it could be empty search result pages or something that we, for whatever reason, once indexed, and then we don't ever want to do that again. And the other part is the technical part, where the server doesn't have enough capacity to handle the crawl requests. And then you have the important part of your site, let's say the blog or the /news, where we want to crawl a lot and we know that people are looking for that stuff. And then we don't have time. We have a budget allocation, but we run out of budget allocation for the rest of the site. And then we don't get to /blog or whatever.
But we could choose to expand it if we saw that the other pages were good, like you said,
right.
But not if it's the server problems, like you're mentioning, because we just can't. Like we can't look at it because of a technical problem.
If it's a technical thing, then it's only you who can solve it.
It's a you problem.
It's a you problem.
Nice.
It's not us. It's you.
Okay.
And there's not that much that we can do on that part, because what we could do theoretically is that we shift over the traffic from /news to /blog. But that's not necessarily a good thing, because on /news, you might be publishing amazing content that everyone is looking for. And then we switch over to /blog, and then no one is looking for it. It can also be a split where we are decreasing crawling on /news and then increasing on /blog if we see that people are linking /blog, for example. But yeah, it's down to either content quality or budget allocation. But again, that's probably not something that you have to worry about.
There's also a section on that crawl stats settings page for file type. So you can filter to see which part is having a problem. Is that something else that people should look at?
This is in Search Console, right?
It's in Search Console.
Yeah. Look at Search Console. It's good.
Okay. It's like information. Like, what do you do with it? Like, nothing.
I don't know what I would do with it.
Like, if the PDFs, like, they're
right. I don't think I would care about the PDFs because they are just like normal URLs and whatever. But
maybe if all of the crawl budget is eating up with the PDF, I mean, the PDFs are eating up all the crawl budget. That's what I meant to say.
I give you a wild example from a real world website where someone was like, oh, only 41% of our crawls are going to the HTML and 15% going to the JavaScript files. Is that a problem?
Right. So PDF specifically, I don't think it's a problem, because just don't publish PDFs if you don't want them indexed, or just robot them out, because that might help, or just put up an extra bots tag, no index, because that will surely help.
What, you just want more budget for them?
It's the same budget. It's not one more budget. It's like for the site, you have one budget and that's it. But JavaScript is trickier because there you don't necessarily bring in content with JavaScript. So you might,
though.
You might, yes.
Okay.
That's why I said don't necessarily bring in content.
Yeah.
And there you might be wasting, because we need to crawl everything to see the rendered version of the page, or we might retrieve it from cache, but that's a complication in this case. If you need to crawl the JavaScript files, then that means that you are potentially wasting crawl budget on that instead of your actual content, textual content.
Yeah.
So it might make sense to bundle things up, like have fewer JavaScript requests. And that might help with reallocation of crawl budget. But then rendering is also caching a lot, like caching very aggressively. So it's probably not that much of a problem. And going back to the original question, I can see how for JavaScript, for example, it could be a very useful thing, that new report where you can see like how much of the crawl budget is spent on JavaScript versus HTML.
I'm wondering if you can tell based off of the proportion, like if that's a normal amount or if it should be something, I guess if the person is bringing up that they think it might be a problem, like if it's 15%, like, I don't know, is that like high or not high? Like compared to what?
That's a moment where you definitely want to sit down with the people who are technical on your team, because if it's a website where the JavaScript is purely decorational and doesn't add any value to the content or doesn't add content itself, then 15% sounds okay, but let's say it's like 35 or 90% of your crawls going into that JavaScript. Why?
Yeah,
it
that
doesn't
seems
add
too
any
much.
value. Exactly. Then you might want to do something about it and maybe just have an meta robots header in the HTTP request forbidding it to be indexed and crawled, and then maybe that helps because you could
Wait, the JavaScript.
Actually, you can robot the JavaScript.
Yeah,
it's true. So you robot the JavaScript out so that you don't have requests wasted on JavaScript if it doesn't add to the content. It will fail in rendering, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't change the content of the site.
Oh, right. And in rendering, you might get these weird warnings that we couldn't load this resource because it was roboted, and then you're like,
correct. Yeah. That's the idea.
Working as intended.
Exactly. Yeah. So it requires understanding what your website does on a technical level to see if that is well spent or if it's wasted.
Right.
And not all the warnings or errors in Search Console are bad.
But they have this on errors as well, like crawl errors. I think on 404, Josh, the Search Console tech writer, put something up that says that if you have 404s, that's not necessarily a problem. Like it could be like completely fine.
Yeah.
Just make sure that you check that those URLs shouldn't exist.
Yeah, that's working as intended, that there's no replacement or anything like that, and then that's fine.
But I understand the concern because, again, that is crawls or requests that could have been spent elsewhere.
Good point. Wrong.
Awesome. That's good. Now we learned something.
404, 410, they don't waste crawl budget. Neither do roboted URLs. Because we didn't get back anything, just a status code. If you do with, on the other hand, a soft 404, that's a good job. Like, you're not putting anything in the index and wasted crawl budget.
5 stars.
on the crawl.
Okay, cool. No, that's a good triple.
I wonder what people, or if people have more weird questions about crawl budget. Maybe you could ask people to @John Moo questions about crawl budget.
Bring him back here.
You can also just write YouTube comments.
Oh no, I will ignore those questions.
No, but that's why we bring John back.
Well, maybe
He
I
can
don't.
deal with it.
You're also mean. So if you out there do have questions about crawl budget, feel free to comment them either on Twitter or better on the YouTube comments. If you listen to the show elsewhere, do go to our YouTube channel as well.
Or just @John Moo.
Don't.
Anywhere.
Go to myspace.com/John Moo.
I think I deserve that. Okay, fair enough.
Or friendster.com. That's also the place where the cool kids hang out.
I mean, John is still on Google+. Right.
So am I.
Yeah, me too. So you can also try to add us on Google+, I guess.
I have author annotations on my Google+ profiles.
That's very professional of you. With that being said, thank you so much for clearing up some of the questions and confusions about crawl budget. I think this was really interesting. And I didn't know the 404 thing about crawl budget. That was news to me. And I do hope that you all enjoyed the conversation, learned something, had some fun along the way. And next time on Search Off the Record, we'll be taking a look at dealing with non-web page content like PDFs.
Oh, I don't know what those are.
Oh, that's going to be fun. So thanks a lot. We've been having fun with these podcast episodes. I hope you, the listener, have found them both entertaining and insightful too. Feel free to drop me a note on Twitter or chat with us at one of our next virtual or in-person events we go to if you have any thoughts. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much and goodbye.
Bye.
Farewell.